Mr. Morrice, great to chat to you as we've done so frequently around the world, and I'm going to start with your cap because in 2000 I went to Churchill Downs to see a horse called Horse Chestnut who was at Paris, Kentucky, Claiborne Farm, and lo and behold, it was Chris McCarron who came storming home to beat Giant's Causeway on Tis Now in the first of his Breeders' Cup wins.
It was one of the great Breeders' Cup races. Very lucky, privileged like you to have been there, as I've been for 35 Breeders' Cups, quite a long stretch back, but Giant's Causeway, one of the real Trojans of the European horses that have ever run at the Breeders' Cup, and that race certainly is looked upon as a classic.
Given that the Breeders' Cup is always held towards the end of October, first week of November, it's a natural progression for horses like California Chrome, Curlin, Arrogate to come to Dubai, and this year we've got none of those particular horses, but it's still a very, very strong renewal with the Japanese taking centre stage this year.
27 runners from Japan is a record. Japanese racing, I think we will all agree, over the last 4 or 5 years has taken itself onto a new panoply where the dominance from the land of the rising sun is there for all to see. Certainly is with the quantity of runners, but also the quality, not only in the Dubai World Cup itself, but the Shima Classic all the way down. And they must have huge chances of further success here against the Americans and the Europeans.
Last year's Dubai Turf yielded the second dead heat in that race since Right Approach and Paolini, when Panthalassa and of course Lord North dead heated, and now Panthalassa has come out, he's won the Saudi Cup, he's shown himself to be extremely versatile, and he takes his place in the lineup from the deepest draw in this year's Dubai World Cup.
Yeah, I think it's put him on the back foot to an extent, although as we've seen, this horse is at his best when he's able to dictate. Some of the races in Japan where he's done that have been absolutely stunning. Even when he was beaten a couple of starts back, he set up, I think it was like a 15-20 length break on them. You don't often see that in a Group 1. I'm not saying he's going to do that, because he didn't do it in Hong Kong where he flopped. To a degree he did it in the Saudi Cup where it worked well for him. The overall balance of form with this horse tells me that he really is a budding superstar, but it all has to go right for him on the night, and it would occur to me that from the draw they're going to have to make a bit more use of him early on, and that could count against him.
Yeah, he won't be there for free as he was in the Saudi Cup, and of course the way that Country Grammar was closing in the Saudi Cup was absolutely sensational, and it didn't look like Frankie was panel beating him either.
No, it didn't, and I feel that from the perspective of the Dubai World Cup from the Saudi Cup, that Country Grammar, he's had obstacles to climb over in his races, but he's shown time and again that he can do it. And even though he is compromised to a degree by his draw on the outer in the big one, with Frankie on board, he's got probably a better chance of doing it than Panthalassa, in my humble opinion.
As far as the rest of the races are concerned, obviously we saw Charlie Appleby and Frankie Dettori at centre stage today in press conferences. Is there anything that's crossed your radar this year?
One of the reasons we're here is body language. When you talk to people out there on the track or wherever you are, in town, here, in the press room, wherever, the body language tells you an awful lot. That's what you come for. And one guy that gave me huge body language about a horse today was Charlie Appleby, when he referred to Rebel's Romance, who is obviously trying now to extend his winning sequence to 6. And when you look back at last season's performances from him, they happened in different countries. He took out 2 Group 1s in Germany, 2 races in the UK, I think are listed in a Group 3, and it all culminated in that wonderful success in Kentucky at the Keeneland Breeders' Cup. But when he talked about Rebel's Romance this morning, even though he admitted that the horse had a minor reverse that stopped him running here on Super Saturday, he actually gave me the impression that that could have been a blessing in disguise. and he was full of praise for the horse. I certainly now want to tip him and back him after that.
Well, Rishi Prasad made a point last night that Algiers is the horse that has crossed his radar as you've referred to Rebel's Romance. Rebel's Romance, eh? As you've referred to Charlie Appleby's body language with Rebel's Romance, and he's a horse that is locally trained, according to the license, locally owned, and he's done absolutely nothing wrong in his prep runs in the Macterm Challenge, but he does have to step up.
He does. He's a big galloping horse for whom a flat track is going to be an advantage. I don't think that Charlie will be in any rush to take him to England and run him on undulating courses there, where there are so many Group 1s. I think his body language is telling me that after here he will campaign him around Europe and then head back to California for the Santa Anita Breeders' Cup. I think that's in his head, rather than trying to go for the big Group 1s where the conditions won't suit, particularly on undulating surfaces. But of course they will suit at the maybe Group 2s that he hand picks, wherever they might be, Germany, France, wherever. I think that's what he'll do with this horse.
Do you think John Gosden, as he's so used to doing, create his own special piece of magical history by being the only trainer to train 3 consecutive winners of the Dubai Turf?
I don't see any reason why not. He's added Frankie on the horse, massive plus. Loved the way that the horse trialled for this when he won at Lingfield. Looked better the further he went that day, and in the end was a very worthy and impressive winner. So I think he's had a good preparation for a horse that's not always had the smoothest of training schedules throughout the last few seasons. But we've got to look at this horse as a class act. When he gets everything together, he's a proper Group 1 horse, isn't he? And with his course experience, that has to be factored in. I think he's got a major chance, I have to say.
Yeah, I think it was very well documented last year that he'd had this terrible lung infection and they'd really battled against time, but he still proved equal to the task.
He did, and another feather in the cap of Mr. Gosden, who is, if you wouldn't mind me saying, the elder statesman amongst our top trainers, but is also one of the most articulate people you'll ever meet in racing, and not only articulate with his language of the English language, but also his articulation of training racehorses, something to be absolutely revered.
A slight digression, still with horse racing, but I interviewed a young man who rode a Group 1 winner on a horse called Anfield's Rocket that is owned by Hollywood Bets, winning the World Sports Betting Grade 1 Classic. And war is war and business is business. But I always believe that there's plenty of meat on the table for everyone, or vegetables if you're that way inclined, for us to work hand in hand together for this beautiful sport.
Well, for this beautiful sport, and of course for the sake of South African racing, which has had its ups and downs. At the moment we're going through a little bit of a trough in some ways, not in others, because World Sports Betting, Hollywood Bets are putting in huge amounts of money to assist, but we've got the horse sickness problem that's reared its ugly head again. Here we are at a meeting that you know and I know over all the years. We absolutely love our South African horses competing here. Not a sign of one this time, and not so many South Africans here. So, you know, let's put our hands together and work toward putting all these things right. And I'm sure that with continued efforts, jointly, we can achieve it.
Well, to put the lid on this wonderful interview, if you look at the brochure that has been very beautifully put together by the Dubai World Cup, it still reveals the fact that Michael de Kock is still the second most leading trainer in the history of the Dubai World Cup, which is a remarkable achievement, considering that he only came here for the first time in 2002.
There have been a few new dimensions added to this meeting over all the years since Cigar won the first running at Nad Al Sheba, and one of the big ones to me, or in my opinion, the biggest was when Mike de Kock came here and took on the boys in blue on their own backyard, and at least ran up with them, if not beat them, with horses that he sourced from not, shall we say, such privileged sales rings. And you know, Mike and Johan, absolute masters there, and the horses they brought here, fantastic overall results for that period, which was, in my opinion, a golden era. Let's hope that, you know, it can come back in some way.
Well, what is interesting is, now that you've raised it, the unfashionable parade rings or sales rings, is that they even took horses like Right Approach from Sir Michael Stout, who raced in the colours of Her Majesty the Queen, and Archie Penko from Aidan O'Brien, and still won with those horses.
They did. Archie Penko, we all remember his wonderful year when he won the Queen Elizabeth II Cup and was so unlucky after Hong Kong to be beaten in the Arlington Million, you know, when he basically ran out of racing room. But I think a lot of the other jockeys ganged up against our poor man.
He got murdered.
He was certainly murdered. He's certainly murdered. But no, great memories. And who else than Mike could achieve those things with horses that he got out of, dare I say it, the bargain basement.